will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. Adaptable approach is palpable if this animal is fallible, but that conclusion is laughable. So with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.
Hi everyone, welcome to 20th episode of the Blockchain Roundtable. Hosts today are Greg from Rivet, Dave from Din.social, Sean, creator and entrepreneur, Nick, friend of Sean, and I'm Joe, architect founder of Dragonchain. Let's see here, a quick update on last week's show, World Blockchain Roundtable, layer ownership tokens. We basically had, let's see here, each host from last week will receive 222 lot, and each topic or question contributor from last week will get 66 lot. These ownership tokens come with perpetual passive income, free edits, and future governance votes inside of the Blockchain Roundtable community. The theme this week is blockchain for supply chain. All right. So I'm going to go in here and I have to refresh so we can get the latest votes. I'm going to try to be upvoting as we go today. You guys have anything new you guys want to talk about before we get into the questions?
I mean, not really, except for, all the DIN stuff that's coming out with the matter tipping. We're ready to get rolling on that. I've been talking to a friend of mine about selling stuff for matter and using our tipping feature and the QR codes to actually start exchanging goods. It's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to that.
It's going to be cool. Hopefully we can start even to, live on the show, even tip. We can't do the lot unless we did the last week. We'd have to figure that out. But you'll be able to see the lot directly in the question when it comes up. So anyway, all right. First question from Juan Esperanza. What would implementation look like for this? Let's say company X is going to use blockchain to track their supply chain. What would it look like for those who are going to actually touch that, to use that? So what do you guys think?
Well, that's a loaded question. That's like let's start from the beginning and explain it all kind of question, right?
Yeah, sure.
I think like the biggest impact that blockchain is going to have on supply chain is the ability to allocate resources, right? So that we can effectively use a resource where it's most valuable, right? And I think that's where the real benefit to blockchain is. Like, all the other benefits exist, but I think it's really allocation. Like, how do we best use our resources at any given point in time? That's where the value is, I think.
Simply stated, and also massive in impact, right? Because when you think about all of literally the concept of insurance emerged from shipping, and there are risk balancing mechanisms running all over the place that are draining potentially productive resources straight out of the system, that are even preventing the kind of innovations that could really change things. Like to this day, I am flabbergasted nobody has attempted until I think about all the technicalities of like bills of lading and all the craziness around tariffs, right? To make supply containers that you just load up, send out the factory door, that just roll into the ocean rather than loading them on tankers, right? Like, that would be something that would be a provenance nightmare, unless you have something that you can trust that isn't a people-based accounting system. And I think we can see some really amazing new ways to get supply chains globally, not just more streaming, but more stable, and less brittle.
Yeah, and Greg, you said people-based accounting, and that's really that's my thing as far as what it, well, not so much what it looks like, but what the implications of it are with different companies and stuff in supply chain. It's just safety and reliability, and then to an extent, just like the more we're scaling up the number of people on the planet and the number of people that we have to serve and the number of people that we have to organize life-sustaining everything for. And so it becomes, after a while, it's either going to get more and more of a cluster, like what we're seeing today, or you're going to have some innovation that helps us kick the can down the road on overpopulation by just, technologically developing our way out of the problem to where now we can handle more people now because we have better supply systems and better supply chains. That's where I think that
Right.
this is useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like from a transparency perspective and accountability, people and once you remove people from the equation and you're dealing with fully automated processes, you don't run into these same types of problems any longer, right? Much to what Greg was saying. So I think transparency is a big part of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think,
And
I
there's
think
also
another thing
cool-
is quality when it comes to and like you said, I guess accountability, because you can be a good company on the up and up, doing everything right, and then if there's a nefarious bad actor along your supply chain, they could take your company down, just because they want to make a few bucks, and along the way, I brought up the medicine out of China a couple of years ago. Just some unscrupulous people wanted to make a buck, took real medicine and replaced it with, sugar pills, and then sold the medicine on the black market. So they made a couple bucks, but like tons of people died.
Right.
And if that was like a U.S. based company, the buck stops with the company, and they'd have to find out how far down the chain it was, and then that I think is what blockchain, the immutability of it.
Yeah, we have something we call line of sight transparency, where you can because we're hybrid, you can control what is seen by who, but when those people see it, they can independently confirm it. I mean, they don't have to trust that I'm telling them the truth. They can actually check: did this really happen? Is it signed by, one of the agents, in the chain? And a lot of what we've kind of geared towards, at least in doing what we have with supply chain, was focused on even the things when you have aid going to some country that's had an earthquake or something, and all the bags of rice disappear because the military grabs them and sells them on their own, or whatever they do with them.
Yeah, that's a big one.
There are tools now with blockchain where you can make the bounties, for a normal person there to actually report where these weaknesses are, so
Anonymously with
Yeah.
a wallet.
Well, and when it comes to inventory finance too, like that's something people don't really know that much about. But when you're talking about consumer goods that are flowing really rapidly, a lot of times, the merchants that are selling them are paying for the interest on a rolling inventory loan that they're constantly taking out in order to continually afford the next set of inventory, right? So like the grocery store is paying their supplier with a loan from the bank the first time they take it out. And then every month they take some of what they make and they pay down the interest and they get another loan for the next batch of inventory, right? That stuff is a weird form of microfinance that sort of exists, but isn't very efficient. So you'll have some pretty disastrous effects when the finance around supply chain starts to fall apart because managers can't predict what people are going to need or going to want. So like COVID hits, all of your ordering is out the window, and correcting that is not as simple as it could be in a decentralized system.
Also, when it comes to business, the trickle down thing is crazy because all these businesses are dependent upon that supplier. And if that supplier is screwed, then like 50 different local businesses are. But I want
the UK ends up with no petroleum.
To not the business aspect of it. This is starting to matter. I mean, people are starting to understand, and we've called farm to table and other things like that. But people are starting to get it. I just the other day, I had buy cod for dinner, and there was two different kinds. One was tracked from ocean to the store, and it was like 20% more, and the other one wasn't, and I bought the one that was tracked. So it does matter.
I was going to say something related to that actually is, talk about disruptive technologies a lot, but I don't always say like why I think they're disruptive. There's a lot of reasons, but think about in the question talking about implementation. What would it look like? What would it look like to the consumer and to the customer of a business who's implementing it? Right now, like branding, the concept of branding, one of the features is that a customer can know that brand's reputation, and they can maybe get some sense of trust with that, they prefer that manufacturer, that company more because they just trust them more. They want that brand because they know their reputation is good, whatever. But what if you're a business who doesn't have brand recognition and you need to compete with an established brand? Well, something that you can do is just exactly what Sean was talking about. Use something that's available now that they don't have. It's like, okay, you don't know my brand. You don't know that you can trust me, but you don't have to because we're using this. And so it's a way to level that playing field too.
Joe's making the sales pitch up in his head. I can see it. Look at that smile.
But the seafood thing, yeah, absolutely.
Let's hear the sales pitch. Let's hear it.
No, I was laughing about this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always the thing. I always, yeah.
I'm gonna let you finish, but
no,
I'm terrible about that.
It works in the end. I never know. I always cringe about interrupting people, but it's all good.
Sometimes I do it, and it's like close enough to the end where I just keep going. So I'm like, all right.
No, but that is it. And we've talked to a lot of different, usually smaller companies that are looking for that, and particularly if it's
competitive edge,
pharmaceutical. Anything you're going to put in your body, food, anything like that, that it's particularly important these days to know where the hell that came from because there's so much crazy stuff out there. And
even the vegetables.
Yeah.
And you're right. And things that used to be, like the symbol for quality or they're not anymore. Like Norwegian salmon, it's disgusting. It is literally one of the most toxic foods on the earth.
Really?
Salmon should
need help.
They're all farmed, but they're and they've been like overpopulated in these tiny farms, so they're genetically messed up. They have they look like Simpsons fish, but you don't know that because you're just seeing a fillet. But they're just concentrated in these tiny little tanks with hundreds of thousands of them crapping everywhere, and they give them cattle pesticides and dewormers just put it in the water.
Like ivermectin?
Mm-hmm.
No. COVID.
I will say
salmon dewormer.
To Dave's point, I think a lot of the larger the giants out there are probably less trustworthy than the ones that don't have brand recognition now. Once you realize what they're actually doing, what they're putting in the foods and everything else, it's kind of like, man, and so those are the brands that people trust. So
I think Subway's a good example of that, right?
Yeah, I don't even remember all the stories. They're even going quite a ways back, right? Between Taco Bell and
my brother
Subway.
used to work for them, and he told me, he was like, yeah, it's not the fresh thing that they say. It's not.
Yeah, they're putting yoga mats in the bread. It was pretty good.
Take note, Crypto World. Take note, Crypto World. The marketing is always going to be lying. So just take note. It's like, you guys need better marketing. It's like, do we? I'd rather just do it. Right. Anyway.
There's so much to this too that's global, and that's the other thing too. Like we know how supply chains work roughly here to the extent that we try to think about the ones that matter to us, right? But when you get into like something crazy like last mile delivery, how does a Dragon work in Japan? I can tell you that it's not names, right? Because they don't name their streets. Or how do you get Amazon if you're living in a refugee camp, right? Like, how the heck does that work? Those types of things are not easily solvable by centralized systems. So like, we can see some pretty neat solutions come out where, if you have the right, supply chain Legos, so to speak, last mile delivery plugs in a way that will make it so that people who aren't living in the formalized West, where we invent these technologies and ideas and ship them, like we can actually port in a lot of convenience for a little bit of overhead in a way that people haven't been able to do so far.
Can I tell you guys something else? Speaking of different ways to handle this exact same the problems that supply chains have had forever. We came up with something this past week that we hadn't really thought of before, which was when you have, let's say you have a larger producer, building atop a blockchain, right? And they give access to certain entities. They might do tracking in various interesting ways with NFTs and things like this. That's all cool and very, very unique. But when you integrate the other parties, the other vendors, the other shippers, the other products in that chain, it's really interesting that because of whatever level of transparency there is, they can feasibly add steps to the process, to the workflow process, unbeknownst to the rest of the chain. That I can, as a business, add. Let's say I'm in some different legal domicile. I'm in Europe instead of America or Asia or whatever else. I might have things that I have to report that these other companies don't, and it doesn't affect the rest of them. That I can still take actions or have automated, smart contracts was what we're talking about, taking actions based upon other events and the state of the entire chain. And that's a radically different thing, because it's not like, I have to build everything in parallel with what this big company is doing. It is literally, I can take everything they've given me and I can say, you know what, between step 3 and 4, I'm going to add this extra value here. And I'm going to have something that nobody else has. Really, really interesting stuff is going to happen. So.
Oh yeah, as long as it fits with the protocol, you can do it. And that's kind of the power. I think something we have to be careful of too is preserving the power of the open protocols that are sort of public and agreed to by consensus, as opposed to by any kind of top-down authority, because that can break a lot of this utility inadvertently really quick.
Yeah. I think you want to weigh it so that the top-down is actually. It might still have a say, but that it can be overcome with the bottom up. I mean, it's
once they realize the benefit, they'll want to do it. It's just like the temptation to tinker is hard to overcome for a lot of companies.
One of the people in the in the questions was asking what that looks like for the company. What kind of do you need to roll out trinkets along the way and little IoT devices? Like what does a company actually need to deploy to be able to incorporate that stuff?
Yeah, that totally depends. I mean, it's like it's API, it can be full integration. We usually say low-hanging fruit, like anything you already have, plug it in immediately. If you're already doing manual stuff, put that manual stuff on chain right now, and then start adding IoT devices where you can, on the trucks, on the ships, wherever else. Locks on the containers.
So just plug in what you're doing right now, and then build that out one step at a time.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be a lot of trial and error, I think. And there's definitely going to be some blind alleys. But if everybody's trying all of their ideas all at once, then the really bad ideas are going to crash and burn. And as long as they're not, spilling toxic waste when they do, we're probably cool with that kind of experimentation. And the rest of it's going to probably be the bigger challenge of getting the laws to allow things to be done a certain way, because a lot of them are like, U.S. side view mirrors, where we literally have to rip off the cameras that are safer and more effective and put flat mirrors on them to comply with U.S. regulatory code.
Is that a Cybertruck reference? Because I know that they didn't want to have rear view mirrors at first, but they yeah.
I just always hated that requirement. Flat mirrors, no less. You can't even. You still have to go to like Auto Parts or AutoZone or whatever to get the blind spot mirror.
Well, that's what Tesla's dealing with. I think with the Cybertruck, is their prototype, their model has no regular or traditional mirrors on the side, but U.S. regulation says you got to have them, even if you've got something better that's more useful, that's safer.
I've even seen a report. Has to have been a decade ago that reports that having digital mirrors is far more safe than the physical glass mirrors, because you can guarantee surround, but they still it's still though nope, you have to have these old ones, because that's what
you don't have to have turning signals. You can have little flags, or you can stick your hand out the window, and that's legal. That's fine, the little motorcycle turning things. But not the mirrors.
It's a weird
so this is the same. All right, so that's the same question, right?
This is what I was trying to follow up. That's why I asked that. It's what are people scanning? Is it QR codes? Is it RFID? Is it an NFC? Is it a whole new computer?
Well, it really depends on what you want to do.
Yeah. Totally.
If you want to track a shipment, you can just put something on the box.
Yeah.
Or even on the container if it's not going to be open, like Greg was talking about. But you can go as far as RFID chips in each item.
So how do you track to the register then? You track to the register with what, a QR, or you track with
Totally depends.
some?
I mean, it's like
Yeah,
you usually
crazy,
see is
right?
like
There's so many options.
the
You
processor,
could
like you might have an
tokenize the
agent
whole.
with a mobile app. You could have devices on the vehicles themselves. You can have active devices that are like on a container or something bigger, or a truck where
As far as
it's actually
business
reporting
data goes, I
temperature
mean, you can
information
even
along the
not
way.
even look at it the consumer standpoint, but a company can look at stores and areas and regions where
Yeah.
their shipment gets it to the store, but if they'll know how much of it gets to the register, how much of it is thrown away, how much of it was damaged
Right.
in
Yeah,
stocking. There's a lot of information that they would never have.
And more
Yeah,
important to
I feel
me
like-
than that is going to be like the attributes along the way when no one's around to scan it. Is like knowing that your medicine was kept at a particular temperature the entire transit so that it's not
Yeah.
compromised,
Yeah.
or knowing that this really is like
That's a good point.
the particular strain of cannabis that specifically works for your condition, and not
Right.
just something that they got a lab to put a good number on and called it that, because you really
Right.
don't know.
Right.
Well, state management is going to be a huge issue. Actually, that's going to be probably the big bottleneck in my guesstimation. Like, where do we keep the states of these things and how do we make them accessible is not something that, especially the future of layer 1 protocols, but like layer 2 protocols are doing a bespoke kind of approach where there are some standards, but nobody really knows how they're going to manage state. So there's probably going to be a lot of experimentation before we land on something that a lot of people like to use.
There'll be a lot more use of upgradable contracts and proxies, that's for sure.
Yep.
Coming along,
Has to
right?
be.
Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
diamond standard stuff is crucial to this, exactly to this, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it has to be flexible. In fact, it has to be pretty radically flexible in supply chain, because there's so many moving parts and everything totally different than everything else. So you know, it's like a nightmare if you're in something that's at all brittle. I would, it's not even doable.
The early systems that succeed are probably going to be ones that integrate well with existing ones. Folks who know those industries are going to be able to create the right kind of bolt-ons as opposed to the destructive kind.
Right.
And then where it goes from there is going to be whoever's thinking about this question. This is a question that if you have a good answer to, you should put out there. Like, don't think that there's an expert who's going to know more than you about this, because there isn't right now. Like, yeah, you might not know the specific supply chain you care about, but nobody knows how this is going to work. So you could invent it.
Yeah. All right. Go to next. JP12X topic: intercompany versus intra-company use of blockchain. Seems like blockchain is an invaluable tool for the industries that send products back and forth between them for multiple processes, while blockchain use within a single organization seems like a kind of hyper tracking. Would you speak about issues of tracking, accountability, etc., that can be achieved via blockchain without a need for trust? You guys say?
Yeah. I mean, that's something that is the intra-company thing's interesting, because there's a lot of, like, think about outsourcing parts to a car you're going to build. How do you trust those companies to, oh no, this is fine, right? The metal purity is what it's supposed to be, or the composition of this part. It's particular. We had on our Harpoon ship-to-ship missiles in the Navy, we had these particular bolts that had to be a certain, like it was tempered steel or something. You know what I mean? How do you know, besides a company that says, "Yep, it is," that it really is? So that'll be, the trustlessness is important, between companies. For that,
and a measured reputation too, because think about it, they don't track those parts in planes for long. It's like they might track them to the point they get there. Okay, we got them from this supplier, which is, let's say, in the U.S., which say as a reputable firm or something else, but they don't know when the failures happen. Are they coming from a certain lot? Are they coming from one manufacturer, not another? You think about that. That would be the stuff that, okay, now we have this history. We know that this bolt came from that company.
And what's the alloy mix, right, in that bolt?
Right,
exactly.
Right.
Yep.
But they're talking about intra-company. That means within the same company. To me, that means like you don't trust the people in your own company. Or
No.
You'd be
You always have
surprised.
inputs. Let's say you're a law firm, and your supply chain for a law firm is information, right? You get. We've dealt with this in the past. That you get documents, you get files. Right now, law firms don't really track that well. They lose them a lot of times. It's crazy, right? And the ability to say, no, this literally is the file that was delivered at that time, and we can prove it with some measure on chain.
But that's not intra.
Important.
That's out of the company.
No, because
This is talking about one lawyer giving it to another lawyer.
No, you're still talking about it inside of your company. You want to know that the input on the way in is established. This is what we got. It's the same thing that we're using in the end. It's inside of our company. Yeah. And beyond that, it could be the user. It could be something like, I'm going to track the fact that you accepted terms. And let's say they are pretty important terms that you could sue me over later. I'm going to make sure that you accepted these terms. And doing it on chain inside of my company is really important.
Or even if you're building your own software off-site.
Yeah, and even like outside of supply chain, right? I know this is supply chain, but if you just look at the use of blockchain for like identity and access management, right? It's a huge part of a security feature set. So, it's relevant everywhere.
Yeah, I think the key to inside companies is really like, there isn't a really good way to want a world where we don't trust the people we work with, right? So we can't really think about it in a zero sum, let's get rid of all trust way. Let's focus on the pieces of trust that come naturally, that we're good at as a team, and and then cover our bases with sort of backstopping in terms of whatever bespoke systems we can come up with. Internally, I think companies are going to want to be able to adapt what kind of trust minimization mechanisms they have to come up with, right? Like, you definitely, if you're building something great, like an awesome car part or something for electric cars, and that's your thing. Hang on, I got a fire engine coming. You don't need to focus on, are we doing this right? Because the people who are doing the machining, whatever, you hired those people because they share your vision. That stuff doesn't need trust minimization, but how do you prove to the folks outside that you're complying with the warranties? That sort of thing that could cause infighting. That if you can figure out a way to minimize the trust around keeping track of those things, you don't have to hire somebody to do it, and that keeps you focused on your goal as opposed to all the things that distract you from your goals.
And you could even have an internal, intercompany process that has its own, supply chain that informs some kind of rating on your external, intercompany or to customers to say, yeah, we did we did our job right. We're tracking this. Maybe you don't say exactly what every data point is, but it informs a public data point where people can say, okay, you're tracking this internal to your company too. And so you're proving that everyone did their job right along the way before it was produced and released.
Right.
And if it's a larger company as well, they know that they're inside. There's theft on the inside. There's fraud on the inside. And, various types that you can at least protect yourself, or at least find ways to identify where that's happening.
I think this is not looking for stuff falling off a truck, but stuff falling off a shelf.
Yeah.
It'll help you find the stuff off the back of the truck, though.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you guys. Where do you think we'll ever get to the point where you can say that, Joe goes out and he buys this, this block of metal, right? And Joe says, I want to lease out my piece of metal. All right, this is a great use case for this. I want to lease out this piece of metal to industry. And, Ford Motor Company comes along and says, I'm going to buy that piece of metal. I'm going to use it in my cars. And I know that Joe owns this piece of metal, and Joe's going to earn money on lending me this material. And we can always, Joe owns this asset, and he owns this asset indefinitely. No matter what form it's in, it's Joe's asset, right? And so it goes from like this whole mining refining, manufacturing, recycling, but through the whole life cycle of that asset, it has many forms, but Joe owns it and Joe's earning on it, right?
Yeah.
That's
it
like
matters so much.
That's like mind blasting, right? Like it's crazy when you think about what we can do.
Asteroid mining without it is my question.
Can we do it?
Could we do it at all? Like claims on those things are going to be huge. Like imagine a 50-ton chunk of industrial diamond that we just tow into orbit.
Well, I think before we get there, like this is probably off topic for supply chain, but I think that's why we need Bitcoin, because how scarce is gold really once we get to asteroids?
Yeah, and whenever they used to be like money, bring it up. Right. When I bring that up like 5 years ago or even less, you're like, shut up, outer space. But dude, there's like one asteroid which they think is like 80%.
Well, I will say, even if you don't even go into the asteroids, you could look at history and you can see, and that was what was one of the most interesting things for me when I first came upon the white paper was that you had a controlled, measurably, how do I say this? That I can know, within a reasonable amount of time, approximately how much Bitcoin would be mined. If you look at gold, you look at the Spanish galleons coming back from the New World, and it destroyed the gold market because there was more gold. And it's equivalent to us bringing down asteroids, right? And with Bitcoin, that can't happen, which is just radically amazing.
Yeah,
really,
Bitcoin protects us from asteroids.
Yes, it does. Plus, you don't have to have smelters in order to make new units of Bitcoin, which strike me as worse for the environment than even proof of work.
I mean, basically, we've got our own version of smelters, don't we? The Cyber Hornets warehouses.
Yep.
Man. All right. Next up, Jacob Wayne. Question: will using blockchain for supply chains remove a lot of of unnecessary human roles and allow AI to thrive in this industry?
Also, Bitcoin miners will now want to be called Bitcoin blacksmiths, just to let everyone know.
Yeah.
Orange Smith. They're orange smiths.
Yeah.
That's very punny, Sean.
Yeah. Just waiting for somebody to make Tiberium or a thing.
Getting nerdy. Yeah.
I'll say on this. I'll say that the human roles are still going to be there. And that's some of the beauty of it, but that between the humans, there is some automation, obviously, but I think the important part is that it is a transparent and objective way to agree to something without dealing with the lawyers and all the BS that comes with interpreting legalese. That there's just a lot more efficiency coming from using a smart contract instead of a legacy paper contract. So.
I've said a bajillion times that this industry, supply chain, is one that was tailor-made for blockchain. It's just perfect.
Well, you get a 2-on-1 too.
This encompasses this. Any kind of technology that was tailor-made for whatever, smartphones for people, so on and so forth. Everyone just takes it in 100%, and it does thrive. I think since when you say this is tailor-made for this, then yes, it's going to automate a lot of, like you said, those little things, cut out a lot of legalese, mundane stuff, and those will be replaced by pretty simple AI that is trustless, and you'll be able to verify it. You'll be able to see it. So I think yes, it will definitely be it'll thrive to a certain point. You're not going to have like the singularity or anything, but it's going to be really, really widely accepted and used. So yeah, I think it will thrive.
The beauty of it, really, to me, is not so much that AI will thrive; it's that we can unleash human potential. Like, how many people should not be doing bullshit that we all objectively admit sucks, including the people who have to do it are like, we're sorry. Like, we're sorry we have to do this. We're sorry we have to have fucking entire industries set up around making people do things that should be done by machines. Mm-hmm. Humans will thrive when we lock AI into the sort of the prison cell of the mundanities.
I think so too. People have ambitions, and they have things that they're good at, and they have things that they're talented and can bring to the world that's valuable. That often they don't do because they got to pay the bills and they got to go do this menial job. So
Music and arts, right? Arts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting really
100%.
philosophical here, but if you want to look at it a certain way, to put that what Greg said like into perspective, people are told that they have to work to get things that they need. But if along the chain of getting the things that they need, there weren't people that had to do the jobs to get the things to you that you need, that lowers the cost dramatically. So you'll have to work less to get the things you need. So it does completely change the whole system. If you take a step back and look at it overall, where hopefully humans can eventually just kind of pursue their passions and improving the lives of everyone, where the basic infrastructure can be given to AI and overseen by humans.
Well, that's
it never ceases to amaze me, like how many people who just have wealth assets that pay them are writing how people need to work for a living. Like, you got to sell your time for a while and tell me that we don't need to solve that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other, like, I know nothing about farming, right? But it's probably about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3. I was in the northern part of Canada, just outside of Toronto. I'm in Toronto, just north of Toronto, and I saw like an autonomous tractor, right? Like in the field. There's nobody in this thing, and I was like, that is so cool. I've never seen that before, but there's a prime example of like where AI is going to alleviate or take away or cause a situation where humans have more time to do things that instead of sitting in a tractor, right? Like you could do something else.
Or a tractor truck,
semi. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Create really valuable JPEGs.
Yeah.
Well, that's important.
And by the
more
way,
important than menial toil, in my opinion.
By the way, that's another extra thing that you can think about with blockchain, in particular with AI, whether you're talking about smart contracts or AI, that we've seen multiple systems where you put in place the best possible definition of how you want to reward some activity, right? It depends upon the state of the system. It depends upon the actions and the timing and everything else. And the interesting thing is that the humans will find a way to game the system to do something you don't anticipate, that you're like, oh, we didn't think about that. When this is in this particular state, they can do this and gain an edge when really we don't want them to do that. So you need the flexibility to be able to address those things that pop up, because they're, especially something as complex as supply chain, you're going to have all types of interesting activity trying to, work around. Some of it will be fraud. Some of it will be just, trying to get an edge. Right. So, and
upgradable contracts, right?
Right. It's important, right? It's
probably
flexibility.
in the whipsaws too, right?
What's that? Sorry.
Oh, probably the whipsaw effect, right? I don't want to explain what that is, but you can find really complex diagrams about how supply chains, sort of start to wobble, and then instead of stabilizing, they sort of wobble harder and harder. It's like it's an analogy drawn to like a saw that's really long that you're wobbling around. You get this sort of effect where things crash into each other at the wrong point. There's a dearth of supply at one supply chain point, and then it's a mess, and it's really hard to coordinate. And
it's like system resonance with like the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, right? Something happens exactly right with the system and how things are defined, and you're screwed. Yeah. So
and then if you don't and then everyone freaks out and adds to the problem, right? If something does happen and there's a shortage somewhere, well, then people want even more of that thing because there's a perceived shortage, even if it's like 2 days late. Like, oh no, all the shelves are empty. Let's get all the toilet paper.
Right.
So then you have that problem, but you can predict
or just
those.
Controlling people with FUD as far as that goes to break down the supply chain.
Well, that's
there's going to be a shortage of toilet paper. What? Oh, I got to go get it all.
Well, yeah, but just being able to predict where there might be publicly noticeable temporary shortages, and maybe like intelligently directing resources there first, just to keep people from freaking out so much. When really, like it's just a matter of like I mean, reliability, I guess. Reliability that the thing is going to be where it needs to be when someone needs it.
Right.
Needs to pick it up.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's like, how is the data used and by who and when, right? Like everybody will glean like different value from data. Some people won't understand what the data means. Some people will understand it. But how can you I guess, and that's one of the challenges, right? Like we say, we can do all these actions or processes and guarantee like this life cycle and quality of product, but who's actually going to be able to technically look at if I'm a regular person, I'm looking at the blockchain and I want to see the integrity of my medicine. That's no small undertaking, right?
Right.
That's a good
how do I see that? Like, is there a dashboard?
Basically shifting trust. We call it a trustless system, but you're basically shifting trust away from people and onto the blockchain system. So people sort of have to trust the blockchain system, which I guess, I don't know, does that require understanding it a little bit, to
well,
be able
it depends
to
on that's just on like a visualization of data. So it's if you can make it apparent that here is an action that you might care about. There's a whole chain of actions, and maybe some of them
you're right.
Care about, but if you care about this one, it can give you because you think about it in a supply chain in particular, everything is going to have to be some evidentiary set of data that it's not just somebody signed a transaction, so that means something. It's going to have to be somebody signed a transaction. I can see if I want that this person works for that company, that here's their reputation score, whatever else, and I can see the photos they took when they opened the container to know that this was undamaged, whatever. So you're going to have all of that content, 99% of which will not be needed. But when it is needed, it'll be radically important because you can see exactly who's responsible for what happened, right?
Sort of a what did you know and when did you know it situation.
Yeah.
But it's
This is another interesting point. So people would probably start throwing rocks at me pretty hard. I mean, some of my close friends and teammates even maybe throw rocks at me pretty hard for saying using tokens excessively is actually a good thing because tokens are comprehensible pieces of data, right? Like if you're going to build a complex system and you want people to pull understanding out of it, a supply chain could be more efficient if it's just signed transactions, or committed cryptographic signatures. But if you have a tokenized event for a thing and each thing is represented by a token, then you can't build a thing that is going to sort of become too opaque. So I think more tokens is probably where the smart money is in terms of making sure things continue to make sense to people.
Yep.
I don't know how much this specifically relates to supply chain, but I was talking to somebody about value in tokens and how the question was how do these tokens have value? Where does it come from? And the answer that I don't know how to articulate, my personal belief is dude, there's value everywhere. There's value absolutely everywhere. The question is, how do you capture it? How do you capture value that's never been capturable in the past? And that's where you get the value from. It's not if you design your token, and this is, like I said, wasn't really a supply chain question. It was more of it was somebody on DIN about, how do these even have a value? Where's it coming from? And so that was part of that conversation. It's
can I tell you
the ability to capture value
all the way back? Yeah, to that, all the way back at Disney. We came upon this philosophy that I still stand by, that everything you do is there's a marketplace, there's an economy that's at work, the politics, on this, who's going to interrupt who, it's like every single thing. Some of them are easier to approach and understand than others, but in every single case that exists, that there's an economy, but there's no real objective measure, and you have to deal with the, politics at work is a rough one because it's not objective. You don't see all of it. You don't know actually who's whispering in, the boss's ear and all that stuff. Particularly at an entertainment company like Disney, it was like constant backstabbery and everything else, right? So, you think about that, and if you can use blockchain to provide scarcity between interactions, then all of a sudden everybody's forced to use the scarce resources they have to do their job, and everything becomes very transparent, and they don't,
Right.
we did a lot in engineering groups. We did some very interesting test cases that surprised us, but they work because they move everything from political to an objective and more of a meritocracy, where you can say, no, here's my performance. I don't give a shit if my boss's buddy wants me to do something. It's like, that doesn't matter. I'm measured this way, right? So,
well, of course, they want to tokenize that reward and actually make it something objective,
right?
In which case, maybe you'll sign up for it because maybe the market will send you a signal you want to respond to.
Yep.
And that means it has utility, right? So
yeah, and
as long as it has utility.
Yeah. Yep.
Utility will drive demand, which coupled with like proper, I don't want to call it tokenomics, but just economics, you manage supply, and that's how you derive value, right? It's so
utility, scarcity, and desire.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Utility is really key though, as far as having, and we talked about this on the how to pick a blockchain gaming game. It's like pick something that has a utility other than just selling the token that it can be used for. If you got two things side by side, and one of them is a meme coin that is good for selling, and the other one is good for selling also, but maybe has one or two other things you could do with it. Well, you pick the one that can do other stuff, because now fewer people are selling them and more people are using them, kind of thing. So it adds to this, it almost reduces. I guess that reduces, but it increases scarcity. A soft increase in scarcity, kind of thing.
Well, it moves us away from a world where we try to simplify the world to map to our models. Which is a really great thing, because that's sort of what I read this really neat piece on Mises the other day, and we were talking about how what we're watching in volatility with crypto all the time. It's just a free market, the way that it's supposed to work, the way that it used to work, and those signals that we're getting from it, that volatility, is something that you don't see in a managed system. But those are really great things that we're seeing, because those are signals from the market that people pay attention to, and they're there for a reason. And without those, you get locked in. And I think that right now we have a lot of life locked in because we have to model things in order to make them simple enough for us to grasp. And I think that's a lot of what blockchain can do for not just supply chains, but for human interactions more broadly.
Yeah, human interactions. Joe talks about software influencing human behavior a lot. And think about how quickly we would learn to not interrupt each other and step on toes. If I had to give you a token every time, I have to give you an interrupt token every time I interrupted you. And then you could only interrupt if you had one of those tokens that you had acquired by being interrupted. And all of a sudden we're thinking about
there's like a 2-second delay on when we talk and hear. That's why we interrupt each other. We don't know when the other person's starting.
That's what I blame it on too. Yeah.
I would have 0 tokens.
By the way, that is a particularly valuable consideration if you're talking about traffic, and if somebody's late for something versus not. It's like, occasionally, like I'm on a trip and I'm like, I don't have to be there on time. Sure, I'll take your money and I'll let you pass me. How brilliant and beautiful would that be with, if the cars were driving themselves and I say, yes, just tip everybody on the way up. I want to get
Genius.
there. It'd be
That's
amazing.
epic.
I just want to be able to have, I just want to be able to point my phone at someone's license plate in front of me and call them on the phone. And just be like, dude, what are you doing? You got to stop.
Or you're the world's biggest super fan of the next Call of Duty, and you didn't make it to the line in time. Someone could tokenize that and sell that position.
Yeah.
Why not? That's valuable.
It's all the way down to parking spaces. There's scarcity in parking spaces. Why are they not better modeled? That I just, they're not modeled by time. If I get there on time and I happen to be in the right place, then I can pick the Rockstar parking. But really, you could do that better. And if people would pay, and it's like, I'll park further away. I want to pay less. Or no, I want to be up right up front. I'm going to pay. Why not?
Because you're selling property owned by someone else, technically.
Well, that's scarcity, utility, and desire, right? Just what Sean said. The parking lot's closer. I want that. There's not very many. That there's value in that parking spot.
And I am, but in that case, the lots themselves should be doing that, right? I mean, it's there already.
Imagine if Walmart had, just like an app, or put it in their app with the parking spots. You're going there in an hour, and you just click. As soon as that opens up, I want it closed off. I want that parking spot.
By the way, in that case, it wouldn't even. This would be brilliant. It wouldn't even have to be monetary. It could be loyalty.
Right.
You stop here every week. You have more tokens, you get better parking. It's like, well,
Or what
sure,
if you've got
that's
an integration deal between
that sounds like a social
and
credit
Walmart?
score there, comrade. What are you talking about?
no, it's
Well,
it's
Tesla
a
Walmart
It's a
have a
loyalty
company.
system is all that is. That's like an
Yeah.
ice cream shop having a punch card saying, well, you shop here all the time, you get so
You
many
can-
free ice creams
yeah.
per week.
front of the line
Why doesn't the
access.
car
It's
that
like
you
right now.
buy
Yeah.
negotiate it for you? Why do you even have to think about where you're parking? You should be able to plug in the destination on GPS. The car should be able to negotiate a spot from the spot market, right?
Well, and the car could look and say,
There's a bid-ask system for parking. Bid-ask for parking.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a competition because if I'm going to go get the same lettuce at either store, the store that gives me better parking, the car says you probably want to go here, right? Or you're going to take less power to get there, whatever it might be. It's like
Right.
the efficiency will be dialed in.
Or if you're going to the movies by yourself and like your friends may be going out to the movies too, like your whole system could know to direct you to that movie theater so that you run into people instead. Maybe that's.
And by the way, sorry to interrupt. Sorry. And by the way, that is I have thought about that. Yes, a government could use this, and it could be used for evil, right?
A little bit, yeah.
But they can already do that. They already do that with freaking laws, and there's no transparency, and you don't know who's paying for those laws to be made, right? With this, it would be a company that I can choose not to go to, and just like Den basically has established here are the behaviors we want. Here are the rewards you get for those behaviors. We don't have parking, so we can't do that. But if we did, we would, right? Because that's literally what we're wanting. We're wanting to reward the people who provide good content and help us evaluate and all the other things, right? So anyway, I don't know. It's rough.
That's cool.
We have to keep it out of the hands of the evildoers, though, Sean. Right.
Well, that's the real trick, isn't it?
Well, that's why I always worry when you have a nation state adopting crypto. You have to be very cognizant of the potential for bad things, right? Hopefully good things come out of like El Salvador, right? Who knows? Okay, next up, Fust. How can Dragon be used for a semi-transparent supply chain? The supply chain that allows end users to, for example, scan a QR code on a product and view the whole history. You don't have to answer in a Dragon way, but what do you guys think? I mean, we already kind of covered it.
This is basically the same question, I think.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't speak Dragon, so it'll be tough to answer.
Yeah. Well, what's the Dragon breath thing that we discovered?
Earth Dragon, right?
Yeah, Earth Dragons, they breathe dirt and
small
rocks.
Yeah, dirt and small rocks.
And when we say breathe, you mean exhaust. Right?
Exhaust.
Exhaust, yes.
Because when you guys
flames.
said that, I'm like, they're ingesting.
Oh yeah, like into the lungs.
Right? Anyway,
Instead of breathing water.
Hold on. There's acid breath. There's poisonous gas. There's fire, ice, and I guess earth. What else? Ted, what other dragon?
What is JoJo?
Exhausts? What other dragon exhausts are there?
What are the dragons?
Oh, exhaust is you got dirt, earth, ice, fire, gas, acid.
Well, there's chromatic dragons, and then there's the non-chromatic dragons.
There's chromatic dragons and non-chromatic dragons. So what are all the
Chromatic dragons are just colors. The evil ones. That's your red dragons, your blue dragons, your white dragons, and then non-chromatic dragons, metallic dragons. So they're usually the good ones. So like your copper, your bronze, silver, gold. Gold is the top, dog. Well, so except for Tiamat, who's the god of the dragons, but she's a bitch.
We're talking about exhausts, Ted. What other exhausts?
What exhausts? What
ice, fire, breath. It's not breath. We don't breathe. They don't breathe it. Exhaust.
Poison. Acid.
Poison, acid, ice, fire, earth.
What's it called? Earth, I think.
I love how we turned this into a whole different question that we're answering now.
Is there a vacuum exhaust possibility there that's sort of like an insost? Someone should make that
wind.
So
just
from what I'm hearing, you've got if they're named after a color, they're bad. If they're named after a metal, they're good. Is that
answer me this?
Yeah.
Answer me this. If Kirby were to breathe in a dragon, sorry, I'm not gonna go there. All right. So Dragonchain. Question: which companies are actually using blockchain supply chain? And this will be the last one we do. And if we want to do lightning round, we can after it. So companies that are actually using Dragonchain, we're running out of time.
I'm not sure offhand. I know Walmart in China was using it a long time ago, trialing it at least. I don't know if they kept doing that or not. I haven't been keeping up with the adoption of that on supply chain personally. Deloitte,
I know IBM. You can look at the IBM marketing
yeah.
pages, and they'll list them. But so far as I understand, at least one of them did have a major issue, and I never heard anything because the blockchain didn't help them. Whatever it was, they couldn't even actually identify where whatever poison that was in the supply chain came in.
Weird.
But that's
well, maybe they could have if they were already on blockchain at the time.
I think there's a risk management company out there for supply chain too, like starts with an I. Interos maybe is doing supply chain risk management with blockchain.
Solano was doing something too, wasn't it? I mean, I don't know who they were working with.
Solano. There was somebody with, it was like Smart Grid or one of the power grids blockchains where they're doing power companies and stuff. They're building something on Solano. They actually just moved from Ethereum to Solana. I wish I remembered the name of that blockchain. Okay. It's something like Power Grid or something.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
Power Ledger. That's what it is. Is it Power?
So,
No.
Let's do the exit. Like Dave, what is going on? We'll go to the end of the list here.
Well, I started out at the beginning saying what was going on, I guess, but I'll reiterate that Den is getting tipping. Den's getting direct matter tipping. In the past, we've had to, because it's built on Dragonchain, we can go in and out of other blockchains. So in the past, we've had to, if you wanted to tip someone or give someone these matter tokens that you have earned on the platform, you'd pay a fee, take it to Ethereum, send it to their Ethereum address, and then they would pay a fee to put it back in DragonNet on Den, and then that was the path. So now you can just go directly DragonNet to DragonNet, Den to Den, tip somebody. It'll be really important for live streaming whenever you have artists that are performing, maybe they're on lockdown again, who knows. But it's going to make interactions between users a lot awesomer. And then with that, lot tipping as well. So people that own the layers can avoid gas fees if they just want to give out 1 or 2 lot to people as a reward, or 66 lot in the case of, questions being asked in the last blockchain roundtable. So a lot of that's getting streamlined and cheaper and easier. So that's me. That's Den. What we're doing.
Greg.
I would just say that, as usual, if you are having an idea right now and you don't see anybody trying it, and you don't even feel like Googling it, fire it up, try your idea. Rivet is here to help if you need it, as are many of these fine people here in this room. I'm sure you can contact any of them for help with your idea. If it's awesome, great. If we tell you it's stupid, we're probably wrong. So do it anyway. And also, I wanted to say thanks to JP12X for his contribution by video last week. I did get him his NFT, so
I saw that on Twitter. I think
that is done.
Nice. That's excellent. All right, Nick.
Yeah, I'm going to continue to talk to Sean and I. Other than that, I don't know. I just have my own projects that I'm working on. A social influencer marketplace that's underpinned by blockchain, operates on like a bid-ask system, and it looks at the actual reach into markets that influencers have, and allows companies to identify the best market match for them to work with. So cool. It's kind of a side project thing that I'm working on.
Awesome. It's gonna be huge.
It's gonna be called Clout. It's gonna be called Clout.
Clout.
Yeah.
Clout.
Nice.
Neat.
Excellent. Sean.
Sable. Check me out on my YouTube and Twitters and all that. Still, me and some friends, Kiths, Crypto, Nick a little on the side. We're building a swap on Binance Smart Chain, which hopefully should be out in the next couple of weeks. That's about it.
Cool. All right. Awesome. As for Dragonchain, we have a few. I know that Trey's speaking somewhere. I think today. You have to look on our Twitter. We have Trey and Phil, and I might be in there too, speaking at I don't know if it'll be live or not, but there's another thing happening soon, talking about in particular blockchain actually. in supply chain. Interesting stuff coming up. Other than that, follow Dragonchain. Oh, we never announced on the shows that we've swapped the Twitter handles, that we held Dragonchain Gang forever because we couldn't get Dragonchain because the owner of it, when we first rolled out, just wasn't responding, and then later sold the handle to somebody else who came to us wanting a donation for something. So we grabbed it, but we didn't ever swap the accounts, and we finally did it. So anyway,
good.
So follow Dragonchain on Twitter, on LinkedIn. So
it's just Dragonchain now. It's just at Dragonchain.
Right.
Cool. If anybody knows the guy who has Rivet without underscores, seriously, tell him that I want to talk to him. It's just like sitting there doing nothing.
Yep. Yeah, it's not good. It's squatting.
It's painful.
So,
it's painful.
All right. So you guys want to do lightning round or no lightning round? We can go through.
Well, there's two questions I think left, right? Is that correct? Yeah.
I haven't looked. So okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Like
I'm still going to vote up on the. Okay. Excellent. So. Dragonchain Hodler again. What type of industries will adapt the supply chain blockchain first? And is it because they're the smartest or because they need it the most? What do you guys think?
I think need it the most, and I think it'll be, like you said, stuff you put in your body.
Yep.
I do agree with that.
Food and medicine.
Yeah. It's heavily needed. For the pharmaceuticals and food. Yeah. It's crazy that we really don't have better info already.
Well, I mean, even just food. Well, lightning round. Never mind.
Yeah, lightning round. I know. I want to say more too.
Yes. Okay, next, Zander44. Question: if adoption of blockchain tech within the supply chain and logistics industry is fragmented, different blockchain companies and industry standards used, how will this negatively impact adoption or usage, and is interoperability a feasible solution?
So it depends on who you ask. I think I've seen reports saying that it's impossible and it's like a million years away. And then I've seen working examples of that being not true and it working yesterday. So it's a challenge, but it's overcomable. It's able to be overcome.
I think it's easily overcome. I think it's on a whole different scale because you're not needing the whole chain. If you're talking about different companies or different shipments or so on, they only need the information. So like everything we went over today, you just need a really good dashboard or GUI that the one blockchain can get the basic information on that shipment or on that item and put it on its own blockchain, and then you're good.
I'm skeptical about how achievable that is actually. I've dealt with a lot of complexities, and the fact that anything ever works is a miracle to me sometimes. So, I'm a skeptic. I hope it happens, but we'll see.
I think the key is let it self-organize, let it be chaotic, and don't resist the urge to centrally plan it because it's the only thing worse than letting it chaotically self-organize.
Right. And that's I agree that I think as an example, IBM takes the wrong approach. They try to get an entire industry in the same room and make a consortium and agree to a standard. All the while, the biggest players are just gaming it to try to veer it away that benefits them. Or that they can really sell something later, and it's better, in my opinion, for small and large, for the players to adopt, make their own use, and leverage it to get better presence in the market. It's an advantage in the end. So you don't want to share that advantage. I think it's much better to let all those players interact as they would, do things behind the scenes that nobody else knows about. There will be some, obviously some standards. There will be, definitely some bits that you're going to want to have data types that are similar and you can map in to your own data. But generally, interoperability is massive. Flexibility is a massive, important thing. But, it's going to be ugly.
So Joe now not only looks like Zeus.
Focus on the states that your customers care about.
Over a lightning round, isn't he?
If we're talking about changing the world, I mean, you're going to have to expect and embrace chaos for a while. It happens at every disruption of the way that the world works, and it has in the past. Mm-hmm. It's going to be uncomfortable and weird for a while, and then everyone's going to be using it, and it'll be normal again. So, we got to.
And by the way, the things that work will be reused, and that's the beauty of it. It's like, holy shit, that really worked. I'm going to use that too, and that's how and you will have a lot of things that maybe aren't addressed for years and years. But the important things, if they're conquered, will be repeated. So it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not hard to get marginal improvements right now because it's basically monkeys throwing darts. So.
Yes. And it is ugly already, but you have all these things that, the world's ugly, everything, all the, anyway. Okay. Okay. So that's everything. That was great. We got through lightning round.
And then next week, what are we doing next week, Joe?
Next week.
Topic is going to be security, blockchain for security, right?
Yes. Blockchain for security. And by the way, I mean, we are, I don't remember when, but we are at some point going to start asking people, give us some ideas for the next round, right? So
I think that was the week after next that we start that.
That's right. Okay. Thank you.
On.
We need to get Austin with us next week, man, because he has some great security stories.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. So make sure you share the episode. The more you share it, and the more it's viewed, the more our hosts and you topic contributors will get. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, everything else. I think that's it. Thanks a bunch.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Everyone.
The first tap of a conductor's wand. The first rivet in a mile-high tower. The master link at the genesis of the never-ending chain. The moment a single empty canvas meets a singular master stroke. There is no one thing. Because now, there are many. Because soon, there will be more. Because one is ever the beginning. Like the first link in an infinite chain, or the first rivet in the tallest skyscraper. The master stroke is found in the masterpiece. What will you begin?